let's just start with a little bit of biography. So where did you grow up, David?
I grew up in Platteville, Wisconsin, down the southwest corner.
Hmm.
Uh, I grew up on a farm, born on a farm, grew up on a farm. And when I was 18, my father said, "Do you want the farm?" And I said, "No." So he sold it.
What kind of farm was it?
It was just a dairy farm.
Dairy farm.
Yeah,
And so you grew up doing work on a dairy farm?
not really. No,
No.
I really didn't want the farm. I heard anything to do with it. We also had a couple hundred ponies and Shetland ponies. It was also a pony farm. And so I grew to have a very dislike for Shetland ponies because they would bite, they would kick, and they were very mean. But they were miniatures, so they were at the time in the 50s they were worth a lot of money.
I see.
Now you probably couldn't give them away.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, if you weren't working on the farm, what were you doing when you were growing up? What were you interested in?
Well, I was always like cars. I bought my first car when I was 12 and drove it. 32 Ford. I should have kept that one too. But so I always had Model Ts and old Fords, and I did work in a body shop when I was in high school, and I also worked in a funeral home, and I also cut grass in the cemetery. Those are my jobs when I was growing up.
Hmm.
Um,
Play any sports, or were you into the arts at all? Music?
I was into sports. I went out for freshman football. I saw my first compound fracture, so I quit. That was enough for me. But I played basketball, and I participated in track. I was a 4-year letterman in track in high school.
Wow. And what year did you graduate high school?
1963.
63. And did you go straight into the military from there?
No, I went to college for a year, and I thought this isn't for me. It was kind of a religious school, and that wasn't for me. So when I went there, my clothes are too tight. This was the 60s, of course. My clothes are too tight. My hair was too long, and the exhaust in my car were too loud. So they said, "See you later." So I said, "See you later." So I went to work for American Airlines in Chicago at O'Hare, and then I worked there a year before I was drafted.
Okay. And so you received a draft notice?
Yes, my mother called me. She said, "You got your draft notice in the mail today." And I said, "Well, mail it to me and I'll get a hold of them." So I got a hold of them and I said, "I don't live in Grant County, Wisconsin. I live in DuPage County, Illinois," trying to postpone it, right?
Uh-huh.
So the very next month, I got one from DuPage County. The government really worked fast. So I wrote them a letter and I said, "Oh, I live in Wisconsin." So that was it. I finally went in after that.
And which branch did you go into?
I was drafted in the Army.
Hmm. Was there any history of military service in your family?
Oh, I had a couple relatives back in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and then I had an uncle that was gassed in the First World War. I had a couple cousins that were in during Korea, but they didn't go to Korea, and a brother-in-law that was in during Korea. He went to Germany. That was it. So
Yeah.
no big history of military.
Yeah. So once you were inducted, where did they send you for training?
I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and it was beautiful down there. It was October. It was absolutely beautiful. And I signed up for, then I went to 8 weeks of infantry training in Fort Polk after that in Louisiana. And that was actually, you've probably heard this before, but it was worse than Vietnam. It was a miserable place, which is what they wanted. They wanted to make it miserable. And they did. Then I signed up for jump school after that, all for $55 a month, which was big bucks back then. So, and I'm scared to death of heights, but for $55 a month, I thought I'd do it, and I did it.
And jump school was where? Fort Campbell?
No, Fort Benning.
Fort Benning.
Fort Benning, Georgia.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'd take off from Fort Benning and we'd end up in Alabama. It was the jump zone, so it was very close.
So what do you remember about your first jump? I mean, for somebody who was afraid of heights.
Well, it was very peaceful up there. I came down and I landed on the road, which I should have known better how to steer the thing, and I didn't. So I landed on a road. Second time I landed on a creek. And, but it was very peaceful, and you don't think you're up that high. You know, you're supposed to jump up 3 feet or try to jump up 3 feet and out 3 feet. Of course you don't. But as I look back at it, it was kind of stupid, because here I am scared to death of heights, and I'm jumping out at 1,250 feet out of an airplane. It's like, and we also jumped in Vietnam a couple times for practice, because we hadn't jumped in so long after we went through jump school again. And one of those times we jumped from 500 feet, which is like, you're almost on the ground. I mean, if your chute doesn't open, you're on the ground right then.
Yeah.
So that was kind of scary.
So after Fort Benning, did you get orders for Vietnam pretty soon after that?
I did. I got orders. Of course, I came home for, I don't know, 30 days or so, which you always do. And I got the orders for Vietnam. And I got orders for the 173rd Airborne, which I'd never heard of. I'd heard of the 101st and 82nd, but never the 173rd. And so it was all going to be new to me, and it was. But it was a great outfit.
When did you arrive there?
I got there, let's see, I left here on my sister's birthday, 26th of April of 66. So I got there within a couple of days.
Yeah.
So end of April of 66.
What do you remember about arriving in Vietnam?
I remember what you've probably heard over and over again. It was terribly, terribly hot. As soon as they opened the door of the airplane, it was just hot and muggy, and it smelled. And I still get that smell once in a while. It's kind of eerie. But I guess we should have been prepared. It's a hot country.
Where did you land?
Oh, I think it was, I want to say Vung Tau. I'm not absolutely sure.
Mm-hmm.
The reception station.
And where did you go from there?
Well, they put us in a cattle car. There were like 3 of us. They had this big semi cattle car, they called it. And we rode in the back. It was open. And they went 3 different places. It was like, I went to the 173rd, and another guy went someplace else, another guy went someplace else. And we're driving down these gravel or dirt roads, and they'd stop and say, okay, guys, you're out of here. And I had to walk down this driveway into the Camp's End in Benoit. And checked into the office there, and the guy threw me an M16. I'd never seen an M16 before. We train on M14s. Oh. And he said, well, we're going out tomorrow morning, so here's your rifle. And I said, well, can I shoot it? He said, well, you can, but I don't know where you're going to do it. So anyway, I didn't even shoot my rifle before we went out. So it was kind of very unorganized.
Yeah.
I'm sure they don't do that today.
So the next morning you went out for the first time?
Went out for the first time. I saw my first casualty. Woke me right up. We landed in a rice paddy, and they were shooting down an helicopter. They shot down a couple of helicopters, and we could see it was pretty wide open. And we were right on the edge of a wooded area, jungle, and they were carrying bodies out of the jungle, American troops. I thought, holy cow, what did I get myself into? So we went on from there, and Michael, I'm gonna turn this around. Hang on. Oh, there, that's much better. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
There. Now I can see you much bigger. You were pretty small before. So we that was the start of my introduction. That I was in an anti-tank platoon, which I never could quite figure out, because the Viet Cong didn't have tanks, but yet we were an anti-tank platoon. And all we seemed to do is march through the jungle, hack our way through with machetes, and we would dig a foxhole for the general when he came down out of his helicopter. And it was like, what am I doing here? so about 5 or 6 of us, I'm not sure how many there was, transferred to the recon platoon, which is right next door. We knew the guys in recon, and they had a very heavy turnover because they were out front, and they were always looking for people. And my platoon sergeant anti-tank was actually just a mess sergeant. I mean, the guy must have weighed 300 pounds. He was fully tattooed and never wore a shirt. It was just like, what's this all about anyway? But yet next door was recon, and they were very run totally different. Sergeant Powell was over there, and Sergeant Powell was actually a major in the reserves here in the States, and he volunteered to go to Vietnam, and they gave him a desk job. And he says, I don't want this desk job. I want to be in the field. So they made him an E6. Today, that'd be unheard of. They would never do that. So he became an E6, and he was the best leader. He just died a couple of years ago. I used to see him all the time. Great guy. He had respect of everyone.
Mm. So you felt like you transferred into more of a professionally run
Yes.
organization.
Yep.
And so once you got into recon, can you talk a little bit about your early experience with that outfit?
Well, there were 33 of us. I remember that. And I remember the hooch we lived in was, they were all the hoochers were the same. They were just canvas roof, like a tent with a floor. That's what they were, and had some screens. But we were never there. That was the problem. We were out. I think the longest we were out was 44 days before we came back. And that was a long time. Your clothes would rot right off you. They were like dead skin. You could pull on your pants, your fatigue pants, and they'd just disintegrate. But they would drop clothes into us periodically, clothes and food. And Sergeant Powell, who was the platoon leader, was very well connected. He was special forces. He'd been around for a long time. He would say, boys, I'll be back in an hour. And he'd call a helicopter in, and he'd come back in an hour, and he'd have a pallet of beer and a pallet of steaks. So we'd have a little party. But recon was very close knit guys. We still communicate.
And did you have a specific job in that platoon?
Just a rifleman.
Rifleman. So when you're out there for 44 days, I mean, just explain for our listeners what it means to be in a recon platoon.
Well, we did a lot of search and destroy, which is pretty common with everyone, I think, all platoons. But we also set up ambushes at night. We'd set up on where two trails might cross in the jungle. We'd hit that during the day, and then we'd come back at night, and we'd sneak back in that same area and set up booby traps, and we just lay there and wait. The medic would come around and give us all Benzedrine at night, so which was speed, I guess. So we'd all be awake all night. Then when the sun came up, we'd police everything up, and we'd go take a nap for 2 or 3 hours, and off we'd go again. So there wasn't a whole lot of sleep. But it was fun. I always compared it to playing cowboys and Indians, except I always thought it was my last day. I thought this is gonna be my last day. And that day almost did come, but took a while. But recon was, we were also recon in the area, pulling reconnaissance, giving information back to the headquarters. But it was I would do it again. It was fun.
Yeah. So at some point, I do want to get to the circumstances around your injury. Is there anything between joining the recon platoon and your injury, which I know happened 9 months into your tour? Is there anything in the intervening period that you think we should cover that you want to share?
Not really. They made me go on R&R one time, which I didn't want to leave the field, but they made me go to Hong Kong. I said, if I go anywhere, I want to go to Australia. Well, so for some reason I had to go to Hong Kong. I went all by myself, no friends. Actually, I didn't go by myself. It was a plane load of officers and a few Australians. The Australians were attached to us, and they were a fun bunch. But we got to Hong Kong, and I was all by myself. I had a couple suits made, and I just walked around for a week and hung around the hotel there at the Holiday Inn. And we came back, and the Australians were missing. They never came back. And of course, the officers wouldn't talk to me because I was enlisted. So it was, I was literally by myself. It wasn't really fun.
You know, I have to ask this. You mentioned that the first time you saw a compound fracture, you said that was enough football for you.
Right.
So now you're in Vietnam. You've already seen casualties, and somewhere along the way, this becomes fun for you. You said you were having fun in the recon platoon. So what changed in you from kind of the kid who? I mean, your reaction to that compound fracture on the football field versus your reaction to what you were experiencing in Vietnam. It's quite a difference.
Well, I was used to death because I worked in a funeral home. So death wasn't new to me. Compound fractures were, and I was a little younger then too. I was like freshman in high school. And when I saw the fracture, but like I say, I was used to death. So that really didn't, it did bother me, but it didn't bother me like the compound fracture did. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know these people either. These were total strangers. I was a replacement, the first wave of replacements. I think my unit got over there in 65, in maybe March of 65. And I got there in April, so just a year later in 66. So as those guys were rotating out, we were rotating in. So we really didn't know any of those people, which makes a difference. You know, if you know somebody that's killed, it makes a big difference. If you know them personally.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, when you've been out in the field with somebody for 44 days, I mean,
you get to know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were people I didn't know their first names because they had nicknames. Like when I was injured, the Greek was with me. Well, I never knew his real name. It was Eric Zoller. Now I know, but we just called him the Greek. I mean, he was blonde haired, big head of blonde hair, and he was the Greek, which didn't make sense, but his last name made sense. So yeah, you're right. You get to know people pretty well.
So do you mind walking me through kind of the day of your injury?
Yeah, it was Sunday morning. I don't remember a whole lot of dates and times and places, but I do remember that morning. It was a beautiful morning, just like it is here today. And the fog, the mist was or the fog was rising from the ground. It was misty, and the sun was shining through. And we were policing up. There were three of us: Eric Zoller, myself, and a new guy who just came in the night before. I don't know. I have no idea how he got there. We were walking down the trail, policing up our equipment, our booby traps the night before, our string wires, or I can't think what to call it, trip wires. There were flares. There were all kinds of things surrounding us.
And where exactly are we?
We're in the Iron Triangle, up Cambodian border.
Okay.
I think that's, my geography is right. I think it's like northwest of Saigon, a few miles. So I was first. We were walking down the trail. I was first. Eric was behind me, and the new guy was behind Eric. So I stopped. We're all smoked then because sometimes we didn't have any food, so we did smoke. They got us cigarettes. They didn't get us food. We had all the cigarettes we wanted. I didn't smoke before I went in service. Most of us didn't. So I stopped to light a cigarette, and Eric walked around me. And just as he walked around me, he got maybe 10 feet ahead of me, the claymore went off. I was standing right in front of the claymore, right in front of it. Thank God I was that close, because he just cut me right off below the knees. That's the lucky part. But it killed Eric because he was a little farther away, and it peppered him with shrapnel. The new guy, I think, got his eardrums punctured. I got one eardrum punctured. But Eric lost both his legs too. So he was, we had pretty much the same injuries, except his were more severe because he was farther away. But the medics, we always had a couple medics with us in our platoon, and the medic was right there. Peter Guerrera, who I've talked to a couple years ago. I got him by accident. That's a whole nother story. But so he came and he gave me a shot of morphine. And well, I tried to get up first of all. I was thrown way up in the air, came down, tried to get up off my back, and there was nothing there. I thought, what's going on here? And I looked down and one of my legs was gone. The other one was bent at a 90-degree angle. And the medic came, gave me a shot of morphine. I said, give me another one. He said, I can't. It's against the rules. I said, give me another shot of morphine. So he did. And so I was conscious the whole time. It hurt. But, and then they called a helicopter in. This is another interesting point. They called a helicopter in and the pilot said, I'm not going to come down here. It's a hot LZ. There's too much going on. Well, it was the colonel's helicopter, Colonel Ziegel's. And the colonel said, get this blankety blank thing down there. Those are my guys down there. So they landed the helicopter finally. They threw Eric on, they threw me on, and away they went. We were back in the MASH hospital in 20 minutes. Which, if that was Second World War, Korea, we'd still be in the field. But I can remember the medics, no shirts on, sweating profusely. Here, this is a tent, a MASH tent out in the middle of nowhere with an operating light. I don't know how that got hooked up, but medics said they both had cut off fatigue pants, probably hot pants with no shirts. These are the doctors, right? And the doctor said, well, one leg is gone. We're going to take the other one off because it's just hanging on by thread. And I can still remember, I said, do whatever you have to do. And so they did. And then they shipped me off to third surgical, third evac in Benoit. I was there for 5 days before I left.
At what point did Eric pass away? Was he already gone by the time they loaded him on the chopper?
Yeah, he was kind of gurgling then. He was, he was dying. He didn't last very long. But I'll tell you a story about my legs. It was I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the first reunion I went to after that, a guy came up to me, Skidmore came up. He said, I have to tell you something that's been bothering me for 33 years. He said, I threw your legs on the helicopter, or your leg on the helicopter. He said, that's been bothering me ever since I did it. I said, well, thanks. They didn't reattach it, but thanks for thinking of me. So that was kind of strange. He's since passed away.
So you said you were in a hospital for 5 days. Where?
In Benoit, in the third, I can't remember what they call it, third evac hospital, or third surgical.
Yeah. And at this point, they've taken off your other leg.
Yeah. I got visitors. I had Platoon Sergeant Powell came, and quite a few of my platoon mates came to see me. And I remember I wrote a letter. The very first day, I wrote a letter to my folks. I don't know how I did that, but I did it. I guess I was pretty well doped up. It was just a cement block building, as I recall, and that's all I remember about that hospital.
Where'd you go from there?
I went to Walter Reed. My insurance company, my insurance agent back in my hometown was a general in the Army, First World War, and very well connected still. And he wrote sent a telegram to the Pentagon. He said, "Get him home." Like they were going to keep me there for a while. And he said, get him home. And they did. They got me home in 5 days.
Wow.
So
So
we went there.
you didn't have to spend any time in Japan or anything.
No, I did spend one night in Japan. I got rolled in Japan by the Air Force.
You got
in
what?
in the hospital. I think they doped everybody up, and then they would steal whatever was on them. And then, you know, the next morning you were gone. So what are they going to do? So that was probably a pretty standard procedure.
Really? You got mugged?
Yeah. Yeah, I got mugged right in the hospital.
Wow.
Well, I was probably unconscious, or not unconscious, but well, I was doped up.
And what'd they take
So
from you?
pardon me?
What did they take?
What did who take? Oh, what did they take? Oh,
Yeah.
My Seiko watch and my wallet, which didn't have any money in it, but you know, it had some things in it. But I got my they left me my underwear and my socks that I had. I don't know where it came from. It was in a duffel bag, I guess. But then I went from there to Alaska just to stop overnight, or to stop to refuel, and then to Washington, D.C.
And how long were you at Walter Reed?
I was there probably about 5 months.
Mm-hmm. And what did they do?
Well, they didn't do a whole lot, really. They took the bandages off. I remember old Mr. Norris out on the sun porch. His job was to take the bandages off of everyone that came in. This is an amputee ward. It was Ward 35. There's probably, I want to say, 40 beds in there. I could be wrong in that number, but it was a wide open ward, all amputees. And when we'd come in off of the airplane, Mr. Norris would take us one by one out on the sun porch, where he had this cart loaded with hydrogen peroxide. And he would soak our bandages, because all they did is wrap us up after they operated in Vietnam. And you know, the blood was sticking, and it was all, couldn't go out. What am I trying to say? It was just like mass, just like somebody put mud on there, you know. So his job was to soften all it up and take the bandages off. And there was, all day long, there were people out there screaming. You know, here's a bunch of troopers out there screaming. And poor Mr. Norris, that was his job all day long. But there was no therapy. There was no, I remember they put me in traction for a while, but I was in a wheelchair, and we got to roam. You know, we're like a pack of wild dogs roaming the hospital, racing up and down the halls, wrecking wheelchairs. So it was another good time.
So no prosthetics at that point?
Oh no, not till I got to, they shipped me back to Madison then. I had a doctor came to me one night after hours, and he said, don't let them, they want to need this articulation on you. In other words, take my knee apart on my shortest leg and do some experimenting on you. He says, don't let them do it. Don't sign anything. He says, I know where you're going. You're going to Madison, and I know your doctor's there. I thought, that's kind of strange. How does he know this? Well, it ended up, he's from Dodgeville, Wisconsin. He grew up, you know, 20 miles from me. And when I lived in Dodgeville after 30 years, and I bought his grandmother's house. You know, it all came around. But he said, don't let him do anything. And he was right. I came to Madison, and I had many surgeries, probably 6 surgeries, but they fixed me up pretty well.
Sorry, just to keep the timeline straight, when did you arrive in Madison? This would have been,
it was in the spring of 67.
yeah. Okay.
I want to say it was around May of 67.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started working on prosthetics after I was there.
Okay. And I mean, how long was it before you received prosthetics?
Oh, probably 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
So at what point, I mean, at some point you get discharged, I assume.
Yep. I got discharged in June 2nd of 67.
So summer of 67, you're out of the Army. You've got your prosthetics. Uh,
Right.
I'm assuming you head home from there.
Yep. I headed home. I bought a new Corvette for the thing stickered for $5,300, and my cousin was the dealer, so I got it 20% off of that, and I got a little stipend from VA, so I got this thing for practically nothing. You know, today they're 60,000. Today, back then they were 5,000, which was a lot of money back then.
Mhm.
So where were we going with that? I can't remember.
I'm
And then I went back to school.
so
Back to
sorry.
college.
I'm curious. Did you bought the Corvette after you arrived at home?
Correct.
Yeah, that's not how you got home.
No.
You didn't drive it from Madison to home.
No. I had to order it actually.
Yeah. Okay.
But while I was waiting for that, I bought a Corvair of all things, and I used to drive it with two canes. This is before I got my real prosthetic legs. I drove it with two canes. It was a stick. I would drive with two canes, which wasn't real safe, I have to admit.
Yeah. So you said you went back to school. What did you decide to study?
I studied light building construction, which was like pre-architecture. But I was decided I wasn't very good at math, so I switched to art, which is always my first love anyway. So
And did you finish with an art degree?
nope, I was about 11 credits short.
Uh-huh.
I never finished, but I got a job in art. So
Oh, you did?
yeah,
What job did you get?
I was an illustrator for Land's End, the catalog, Land's End.
From
I was there.
Oshkosh.
What's that?
Aren't they from Oshkosh?
No, that's Oshkosh by gosh. But it's another Wisconsin company. It's Land's End they do. It's more like LL Bean type
Sure.
things.
Yeah, no, I'm really familiar with them. I thought they were also in Oshkosh.
No, they're in
So,
Dodgeville. But I was there for 28 years doing that
so for 28 years, you were an illustrator for LL Bean.
for Land's End.
For Land's End.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
And at some point, what else happened in your life? Did you get married, start a family?
Yep. I got married. I had 5 children. And after 19 years, I got a divorce. And let's see, what else did I do? Well, I had jobs between. I sold cars for a while. Let's see, what else did I do? Oh, I bought a paint and wallpaper shop. I operated that, which I hated. I hated that, and I hated being in the car business too.
So all of that was before you got the job with Land's End.
Right.
So once you started working for Land's End, you stayed there for a
I
long.
stayed there. That was back then. It was a great company to work for. And then Sears bought them just before I retired, and they, as far as I'm concerned, they went way downhill.
Yeah. What year did you retire from Land's End?
Let's see, it's 2007, maybe something like that.
Okay. So during that time, I mean, you're leading a pretty normal, productive life. You've got a career, you've got a family.
Yep.
Where is Vietnam in your consciousness during that period?
I think I pushed a lot of that stuff right out of my mind. I don't remember like the 70s, the 80s. They're just a total blank to me. So I'm sure that's all connected.
So no contact with other veterans or veterans groups?
Not until the year 2000. I did join the American Legion, and back in my hometown. But I always kept looking for reunion notices for my unit. And I never saw them until the year 2000. My friend, who was our radio operator, lives in Franklin, Tennessee, retired from the insurance industry, and he was going to the computer and found my name, my phone number, who he thought was me, but he ended up calling my son. And my son, and he wanted to talk about me as if I'm dead. And my son said, well, why don't you call him? He said, what do you mean call him? Didn't he die? He said, no. So Jerry called me and we talked for quite a while. And there was going to be a reunion of my unit in Rochester, Minnesota.
What year?
That was in 2000.
Okay.
So from 67 to 2000, I had no contact with anyone. So I went up there. For 2 weeks after that, I kept getting all these phone calls, and my wife had answered the phone. She said, "There's some old guy on the phone for you." Well, those are my buddies, right? Calling and say, "Hey, you're alive." So I went up to Rochester and was signing in, and I noticed the computer said Marcus Powell. That was my platoon sergeant. So I knew he was there. They had his name tag up there. They just freshly made it. And so I thought, great, I'll get to see Marcus. So I found out where recon was going to have they had a little room there. And I walked in there, and they were all standing there like they were waiting for someone. I said, "What are you waiting for?" They said, "We're waiting for Kies." Well, they called me Kies, of course, but they were waiting for Kies. I said, "Well, that's me." They said, "No." They thought I'd be in a wheelchair. So that was the beginning of many reunions. I went to a lot of reunions. We went to Alaska. We went to all over the place, California. But I've kind of quit that because it's too hard to travel anymore. Mm-hmm. Like this year is going to be in Arizona. I'm not going to that. Mm-hmm. But it's getting hard for a lot of guys to get around. A lot of guys that were perfectly healthy didn't get hurt. They have arthritis. Kidney disease is very prevalent among my platoon mates for some reason. So I still keep in contact with about 3 of them. Emails, Facebook, that type of thing.
And all these guys thought that you didn't make it,
right.
And were surprised and I assume delighted to find out that you were alive.
Yeah, even ones that visited me in the hospital thought I had died.
Yeah. So we're talking about the year 2000. The wall was dedicated in 1982.
Right.
So that's 18 years of your name being on the wall. When and how did you find out that your name was on the wall?
I found out when I was selling cars. I went to lunch, came back from lunch, and there was a post-it on my desk.
What year are we talking about now?
This was in probably mid to late 80s.
Okay. So just a few years after the wall had been dedicated.
Yes. But so I had no idea who put the post-it there, and the office help didn't see anybody go in my office to put a post-it there. So I never did find out who put that there. But they said your name was on. Did you know your name was on the wall? That's all it said. And so I started looking into it, and it was. It used to be in the book. My name used to be in the book at that time in the directory, and so since taken out. So you probably know about that. Mm-hmm. You've taken all the faulty names out.
So you were talking about you went to lunch. You were working at the car dealership. You went to lunch. When you came back, there was a post-it note on your desk.
Right.
You looked into it. I'm assuming that when you maybe it occurred to you initially that the David Kies or Kies whose name was on the wall was a different person.
That's what I originally thought, right? Then till I did a little more research and found out it was next to Zoller's name, and the timeline was right. I have a high school friend who's also on the same panel, 14 East, right down below me a little bit. Oh, I'm out of breath. My friend, I have to say a little bit about my friend. He was drafted into the Navy, of all things, which I've never heard of. And then he was made a corpsman. And then he was killed. So that's kind of a sad story.
Yeah. So a Navy corpsman most likely was attached to a Marine unit. Yeah.
Right. and being drafted.
Mhm. Mhm. So it's somewhere mid to late 80s, you said, and you discover that your name's on the wall. What
Right.
happened? And then you verified that it was, in fact, you. At what point did you go and see that for the first time?
Well, I didn't want to go see it. I didn't want to see the wall. It wasn't that my name was on there. I just didn't want to see the wall. I thought it'd be too emotional. So I went to the traveling wall that came to town here. And I didn't want to go to that either, but my dentist called me. My dentist from the VA called me. It was my neighbor. One night about 11 o'clock, he said, let's go to the wall. It's out here at the VFW post. It
What
was,
do you, and this is still in the 80s?
no, this was probably, I want to say, it was in the 2000s.
Okay.
It was many years ago. He didn't want to go either, but he said, get your flash out. I'll come pick you up. So he did. We went out there. There was a security guard on each end of the wall. It was a cold, rainy, misty night, just like Vietnam. And we're walking along in front of the wall, and I showed my light up on the wall where I thought, I might be like halfway through. And my light shined on a name called David Bendorf. David Bendorf was my younger sister's boyfriend in high school. That was really, he was in the Marines also. I thought that's really kind of that got me more than anything. Then I saw my name, and it didn't bother me like I thought it would. But that broke the ice, so I could actually go see the wall in Washington.
And when did you do that?
Oh, I would say 2007, something like that. About the time I retired.
Mm.
So it took a while.
Yeah. Walk me through what you remember about that. Uh, what do you remember about that day? What do you remember about seeing your name on the wall in DC for the first time?
Well, we went with my wife and I went with some friends. And he had never been in the service, but it affected him a lot more than it affected me. I mean, the guy was crying. But I remember there were school kids there, a lot of school kids, but they were all very reverent, very quiet. They were all rummy names. I think I told you before there was no paper or pencil there when I was there. I think the school kids had them all. They had all the pencils and all the paper. But the teacher, the instructor, or the chaperone gave me some paper and pencils so I could rub my name. And then, of course, we went to visit the Korean Wall. I don't know if the Second World War wall or the Second World War memorial was up then or not. I don't know what year they put that up. We didn't see that anyway. But
I remember.
I remember it was very somber.
What was it like for your wife to stand there and watch you do a rubbing of your own name?
She helped me hold the paper. She had been there before, actually. She used to travel a lot for work, so she had been there and actually got into an argument with a park ranger. She didn't know where my name was, and talked to the park ranger, and the park ranger said, "There are no mistakes on this wall." She said, "Yes, there are." I'm living with one. So she finally found it somehow. Don't know how, because my name was out of the book at that time. So she was prepared for what she saw.
Mm-hmm. Well, you must get a lot of calls or comments or inquiries about this. I know you've done a number of interviews. Um, it's pretty unusual company that you're in.
It is. I'm honored to be there, but yet I know I don't belong there. It's like if you get credit for something you don't do, but I'm still, I guess maybe I'm watching over Eric and and Bill. I don't know, it's an honor to be there. But like I say, I don't want to take credit for something I didn't do.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, there's a particular moment, and maybe you can identify it, or maybe you can't. But I'm sure that given the nature of your injuries, there was a moment where it could have gone either way. I mean, you
Right,
you, you could very easily belong on that wall.
right. That's right. And I'll be there someday. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think about how close you came to belonging on that wall?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think about it quite often. Um, it took me probably 40, 30, yeah, about 40 years before I realized I had PTSD. Well, in fact, it was 2003. It was when we invaded Afghanistan. And I was on the news all the time, body counts, body counts, body counts every morning. And that got to me, it got to a lot of Vietnam vets. I know a lot of them really struggle with that. So I got this little green card from the mental health department at the VA here. They said, if you want to talk, just come on in. So I went in. I went through the 12-week program, which helped me considerably. I mean, I was like a lot of guys, I couldn't sit in front of a window. I couldn't sit with my back not against the wall, in a restaurant. If I see a bicycle on the street or on the sidewalk, just tied up at the sidewalk, I'd kind of walk around it, thinking it might blow up. It was pretty weird now that I look back at it. But it took me a long, long time to realize that, I wasn't I wasn't being realistic about things.
What was the biggest difference for you after the 12-week program? Well, I mean, just like
Well,
in daily life, the difference between before and after that program.
I'm not afraid anymore. I used to be afraid. I was never one to have nightmares and, beat up people and that type of thing. But it just bothered me I was just very cautious, very, I don't know what the word is,
On
apprehensive,
edge. Yeah.
on edge. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And that was, it was kind of a big mellowing factor. Um, I don't know. I just became a more regular person, I guess.
Mm.
So, but I still think about it. I still think about being there, about my friends, and what could have happened, what did happen. So,
What have you learned about, I mean, the circumstances of your name ending up on that wall? I mean, yeah, I mean, was there just were records lost? I mean, why did the Army believe that or the Department of Defense believe that your name should go on the wall?
I think it was part of because I was picked up by the colonel's helicopter, and there were no records. If you're picked up by medevac, medevac, I guess that's what they call it. Uh, you'll have a record. Somebody keeps records in there, and they didn't have a record until they got to the hospital, I guess. But it's just one of those mistakes.
I mean, at some
Yeah.
point you were discharged from the Army, so there were
Right.
discharge papers. Like the Army
Yep.
knew that they had discharged you,
Yep.
and they knew that you were discharged in the United States.
Right. And they knew that it was a medical discharge, and I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Somehow, when we were designing and building the wall, we got a list of names from the Department of Defense, and I know that list was gone over
Many
many,
times.
many, 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 many times.
Yeah.
Uh, and nobody, in all of that cross-checking, nobody discovered your discharge papers.
Nobody caught it.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of strange.
yeah.
And I wasn't the only one, right? correct?
You're not, yeah, you're not the only one. I believe Tim said there are, I believe it's 8. Is it 8? No,
8.
maybe it's more than that. I'm getting my statistics mixed up. Tim dumped a lot of stats on me on Friday, and maybe it's 32. 32 seems like the right number.
32. Okay, I was saying 34, but 32.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's still out of 58,000. That's not too bad, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Well, how's life been since then? I mean, obviously you've remarried.
Yep, we're remarried, and things are going great.
Yeah, you still living in Platteville?
Oh no, I'm right outside of Madison, in Verona,
Mm,
which is right like down the street from Madison. It's a great place to be. Madison's a great town.
that's what I hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have some jazz musician friends here in the Northwest who came here from Madison, and they speak.
Huh.
They say it's a really great,
Yep.
very vibrant town with a real
Yep.
heartbeat.
Yep. It is.
Are you still into cars?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm driving Subarus now.
Mm,
I was into BMWs and Mercedes and all that type of thing, but I've mellowed a little bit, I guess. I'm driving Subarus. I could move out to the Northwest.
you could. You'd be right at home here. I don't know if they sell Subarus outside of the Northwest and the upper Midwest and maybe Maine. They probably have them in Maine and New Hampshire.
Right.
That
Yeah.
that does seem to be a really popular car at a certain latitude in the United States.
Yeah. Well, we used to go to Florida in the winter till COVID hit, and you'd see Subarus down there, but they all had northern plates on.
Right. Right.
I had to search hard and long to find a Subaru dealer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it happens to the best of us. I used to be into BMWs also, and now I drive a Volkswagen, and
There you
that's
go.
okay. I love it.
Yeah.
I love my Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Um, Tim mentioned something about a connection to, was it the Lucy show? I Love Lucy? Was there some?
Oh, Eric Zoller's mother was on I Love Lucy. She was a regular on I Love Lucy. Can't think of her last name. And if I heard it, I would know it. It wasn't Zoller. It was something else.
Yeah.
I want to say Mary McCall.
Uh-oh.
Our birthdays are very close together. We were both short timers. We were both, there 9 months, 3 months to go. And so a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Except he was blonde and I wasn't.
Yeah. Well, so sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to back up a little because right in the middle of that story, your signal froze and I missed a good 15 seconds of it. So tell me, let me just ask the question,
What was the last thing you heard?
that you couldn't remember his mother's last name.
Oh, it was Mary something, Mary McConnell, Mary
Yeah.
something.
Do you want to tell me about what you remember about Eric?
Eric was a really nice guy. In fact, I still have. I was sent. One of our lieutenants sent me his helmet cover. We never wore a helmet very often, but I have his helmet cover. The liner that was over his helmet with all these writings on. He was kind of an artist himself, and he was a tall, thin guy, big head of blonde hair. Really nice guy. That's all I remember. But like I say, I didn't even know his name other than the Greek. That's what we called him. I don't know where that came from, except his last name.
I think isn't Zoller a German name?
Well, yeah, I would think it'd be German.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would think it would be.
Yeah.
I don't know where the Greek came from.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But you said that he was there, like you. He had been there 9 months, had 3 months to go.
Yep. I was almost there 9 months to the day, and so was he.
And how much of that time did you spend together?
Well, since I transferred into recon, we were there together all the time. We weren't close friends. I think we were in different squads. There were like 4 squads, but you know, we were all together, but not, you know, sitting in a foxhole together, anything like that. Um, so you know, I just know him in passing, and we didn't sit down and play cards or anything like that. I have I have pictures of Zoller. We have another friend. One of his best friends is Pat Bowe, who was one of my best friends. And Pat took pictures like you wouldn't believe. I always accused Pat. We stay in contact. I said, I don't think they issued you a weapon. They gave you a camera. I mean, he has thousands of pictures of everything. And he had a lot of pictures of Zoller.
Do you have a picture of you and Eric together that you could send me?
I don't. I have. I don't have a whole lot of pictures of myself other than by myself. I could send you pictures of Zoller. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe a picture of you also.
Yeah. Okay. I can do that.
One of each would be great. Yeah. Dave, is there anything we haven't covered that you think would be an important part of this story?
Let's see. I think we pretty well covered it. I'm sure there'll be something after we hang up that I'll remember, but I think something that was that I still think about is Walter Reed. There were actually people in there. There was one in particular that the guy died. He lost an arm, but mentally he couldn't take it, and he gave up hope because he lost an arm. Like, you know, there's always somebody worse. You know, I lost my legs, so I wasn't going to feel sorry for myself. I look around, there's always be somebody much worse. You know, maybe somebody lost 3 limbs. When I go to the VA, when I finish my appointments, I go there to work out at least once a week, and I have a lot of appointments there. I always go down and sit in the lobby inside the front door just to watch people come in. And I know some of these people are a whole lot younger than me, and they're in a lot worse shape, you know. So it's kind of a therapy session just to sit there and watch people walk by. Some people are really struggling. Who knows, you know, what their problem is, but I think we need more of that. You know, just people feel sorry for themselves. You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, if you think of anything else that that you want to include, it's really easy just to jump on another Zoom call.
Yeah.
Theoretically, it's very easy. Today,
Yeah.
today it wasn't very easy.
I don't know what that was about.
Yeah. But yeah, you can reach out to me anytime. We can always jump on another call and you know, add to the conversation. But
Yeah. And
there's
I'm pretty free too. My only thing on my calendar usually is going to the VA. So
yeah. All right.
we have a great VA here, by the way. It's just like I can't say one bad thing about it. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I think I mentioned this the other day. Back in the 70s, I wanted to go get some work done on my legs or something. I don't know what it was, but I had to go to Milwaukee, which is clearly the other side of the state. And I finally got that taken care of. But anyway, I'd call for an appointment, and they would not make me an appointment. They just wouldn't do it. They had a lady that ran the prosthetic department. I think was probably a Second World War vet. Didn't like Vietnam vets. She wouldn't make me an appointment. Are you there, Michael?
Yeah, I've got some weirdness going on here with my hardware. It's just disconnecting and reconnecting kind of randomly.
Yeah, your picture disappeared.
Yeah, we didn't lose the call, and I'm sure that the recording picked all of that up that you were just saying. But
Okay.
I kind of blacked out for a little bit. So, other than that, other than the experience with the people in Milwaukee who were unfriendly to Vietnam veterans. Was there any other anything else about coming home that you found difficult?
Well, at the Legion, and then later when I joined the VFW, you'd go down to the bar after the meeting, and all the Second World War guys would be at one end of the bar, and the Vietnam guys would be up the other end, because they wouldn't mingle with us, because we weren't the greatest generation, I guess. They they thought we're a bunch of counterfeits.
Well, you know, I definitely won't use this in the episode, but what does it say about a bunch of guys who can look at you and see what you sacrificed and can't find it within themselves to honor that?
Right. Yeah, you're right.
How great
I
are
don't,
they?
it wasn't just my posts either. I know that's gone on all over the place. But we have one in my VFW post. We have one Second World War vet. He was almost 100, greatest guy in the world, and he loves Vietnam vets. So I think that's a good way to go out. All the other guys are gone, and the best one of the bunch is left.